Stay tuned for Ellie Adder, Private Investigator. Today's adventure has Ellie staying at a fabulous desert hotel and involved with movie stars and meteors. It's 1939 and mystery blows in with the desert wind.
I'm Ellie Adder, Private Investigator. I never know when a case will come my way. I was traveling on the train from San Francisco to home when I decided, on a whim, to hop off at Winslow, Arizona, and spend a few days at one of the famous Harvey hotels called Rancho La Posada. The hotel was designed to look like the home of a rich Mexican ranch owner from the early 1800s. It's all adobe walls and vigas and Meteors making up the ceilings. I checked in, and after a nap in my room, I headed to the dining room for dinner. I stopped at the entrance and scanned the room. To my surprise, I saw an old client at one of the tables. He saw me at the same moment.
Ellie! How wonderful to see you!
Tom Roberts. I do so remember our adventures with the horse rustlers.
Join us here and meet my friends.
Tom introduced me. Tom and his friends are here to develop a Western movie. First was Walter Dallas, the director. Next to him is Shay Olathe, a famous Western novel writer whose book is being adapted for the film by a woman screenwriter, Dana Hammer. Also present is Bessie Love, a wonderful actress who will co-star with Tom.
Nice to meet you, Miss Adder. Please join us for dinner.
Oh, Miss Hammer, I see you have a cast on your ankle and it looks new. What happened, if I might ask?
I fell earlier today and the local hospital patched me up. I'm getting around okay, and it's not going to interrupt working on the screenplay.
Dana is a real trooper.
Yes, indeed. If that had happened to me, I'd be on the first train back to Hollywood.
I agree with you, Miss Love. Dana probably should go back to Hollywood and see a specialist about her broken ankle.
Ah, posh. The doc here seemed perfectly competent, and he said everything will heal just fine.
I'm sure you're going to be just great, Dana. Waiter, bring Miss Adder a menu and get her a drink. Let's get this show on the road. Mr. Olathe, you were saying?
Yes, Miss Love. We were discussing your role in the movie.
Right, Mr. Olathe. I know Westerns are all about cowboys and rip-roaring action, but I don't want to be the silly woman who needs to be rescued in every reel.
The leading female role will be for a lady of the 19th century. Not a liberated flapper from today's overheated world.
Miss Love, I'm sure we can develop your character in the film to show a strong woman who has a meaningful role in the story.
Well, it better. Walter, honey, I'm only doing this film because I love you and you're paying me a fortune, but I'm not going to mess with my image as a serious actress just because you're good and bud.
After dinner, people wandered off to their rooms or the bar. I was left sitting with Tom and Dana. Dana explained more about the process of adapting a novel for a movie.
We're here to look at locations and develop the storyline for the film. The book has more material than we can fit into a movie, so we have to be selective and pick the best parts. Well, an important gunfight takes place around the edges of a small meteor crater that is on Wizzy Michael's ranch. The crater was created by a piece of huge meteor that created the big crater that is 20 miles to the west.
I've heard about that big crater. It's supposed to be amazing and around 50 million years old.
Yes, I want to use the big crater as it is so spectacular. Mr. Olathe insists on the small one, as that's the crater he used in the book. To try and settle the question, we all, Tom, me, Walter, Bessie, and Mr. Olathe, went to Wizzy's ranch to look at the small meteor crater.
To make a long story short, Wizzy was acting as tour guide and everyone was hiking down into the crater. Bessie was having trouble with the path because she was not dressed for hiking, and all us guys were helping her. Dana, who had on sensible shoes, had briskly walked on ahead. Suddenly, she tripped and tumbled down the slope to the bottom of the crater. Everyone says it was an accident.
Accident my foot. Something tripped me. But who would want to hurt me?
Tom and I volunteered to go look around the small crater to see if there were any clues. Next morning, Tom rented 2 horses. He decided we could ride to the crater via a back way. While it's several miles via car to the small crater, overland from the hotel it's less than a mile. As I walked into the barn, Tom commented,
Do you always travel with your riding clothes, Ellie?
I'm headed home for my last case, and on that occasion I needed to ride horses, so my breeches, boots, and gloves are still in my luggage.
Well, that was very handy. Well, let's head out.
As we approached the boundary of Wizzy's ranch, we came to a barbed wire fence. We untacked the horses and let them graze, slithered through the barbed wire and walked to the crater. After searching the trail down into the crater, Tom was standing near a huge Serrero cactus and discovered a hole in the trunk.
Ellie, come here and look at this. There is a switch inside this hole.
Tom flipped the switch and we heard a faint whine of a motor. We followed the sound, and hidden under a bush beside the trail, we found a mechanism that raised and lowered a wire across the trail.
Well, that settles it, Ellie. Somebody did trip Dana.
Suddenly, a rifle crack interrupted our day.
Duck, Ellie!
Who is shooting at us?
Stay low and quiet. If he is a hunter, he will wait to see us move. Let's see if we can sneak around behind him.
Tom went to the left and I went to the right. I successfully got behind the shooter, who was waiting patiently to spot us. I saw Tom behind the shooter on the other side. Having been a keen softball pitcher in college, I selected several suitable rocks and chucked one low and hard at the shooter. I nailed his trigger finger, and he let out a yelp and dropped the rifle. Tom charged from the other side and tackled him.
I got him, Ellie!
I trotted over. Tom rolled the shooter onto his back and pulled off his floppy hat.
Well, Wizzy! Why are you shooting at us?
You're trespassers, and I got a rights to shoot at you.
I don't think so. Now, I think you know about the tripwire, and I also think the sheriff will want to see it too.
Now don't go jumping to any hasty decisions. I'll tell you what the deal is.
Wizzy fesses up that Mr. Olathe, who is an old friend of his from earlier days, had paid him to set up the tripwire, but Wizzy did not trip Dana. Mr. Olathe was the one who flipped the remote switch to activate the tripwire.
That tripwire mechanism is pretty sophisticated. Who set it up?
Why, me. I built that device. They don't call me Wizzy the Wizard for nothing, you know.
Wizzy said that Mr. Olathe was tired of arguing with Dana over how to adapt his book and he wanted her off the picture.
I've heard enough, Ellie. Let's go confront Olathe.
Tom walked over to the cactus with the hidden switch and tore the switch from its niche. Leaving Wizzy at the crater, but after emptying his rifle of bullets, Tom and I retrieved our horses and rode back to the hotel. We found Walter, Bessie, Mr. Olathe, and Dana eating lunch in the dining room.
Dana! You were tripped, and it is Mr. Shea Olathe's fault.
I had nothing to do with it. I was nowhere near her when she fell.
Tom slammed the switch down in front of Mr. Olathe.
There is proof. The remote switch with which you activated the tripwire.
Olathe went still, and his eyes grew wide. He and Dana both stood at the same moment.
You lousy old hack! I ought to smash your face with my lunch.
Everyone, calm down.
Mr. Olathe turned to go. Tom grabbed his arm and pushed him back into his chair.
I gather this is true, Olathe? Did you set out to hurt Miss Hammer?
I had to get her off the picture. She was taking every element of my book and distorting it in the name of entertainment or woman's suffrage. I'm an authentic Western storyteller, and I won't have some Hollywood know-it-all destroying my work.
The kid stays in the picture, Mr. Olathe. You are expendable. Read your contract. We own the book, and your input is at the pleasure of the director. The director, that's me, in case you've forgotten, has no further need for your services.
Mr. Olathe stood, glared at each of us in turn, and stomped out of the room.
Dana, Olathe can be charged with assault and battery. However, he is well known around here, and a fair trial might be hard to come by. Charge him if you wish. I'll support you.
Let's see how it all plays out. I really would have worked with him on the script.
We'll make it work, Dana.
That was a productive morning. After lunch, the movie people went back to work. Tom and I went out riding again. We saw Mr. Olathe catch a train west. I had a lovely dinner with Tom, and the next day I resumed my peaceful train ride home. I felt like I'd been involved in a long string of adventures for quite some time now. How do I get myself into these things?
You have been listening to Ellie Adder, Private Investigator, in the case of Meteors and movie stars. Ellie Adder will return for more mystery and adventure in the near future. Tonight's cast: Ellie Adder, Private Investigator, was played by Emma Bryan. Tom Roberts was played by Steve Martell. Dana Hammer was played by Kelly Martell. Shay Olayath was played by Morgan Marion. Featuring Jason Marion is Wizzy Michaels. Jeff Stocky is Walter Dallas. And Suzanne Warmack is Bessie Love. Written and produced by Jason Marion and Roger Marion. Music by Jason Marion. This is your announcer, Ben Pearson. Have a pleasant evening.